and welcome back to the Prepped and Polished podcast, episode 227. Be sure to join our community. You can find us on any of the social media channels by typing in Prepped and Polished. You can find our podcast on SoundCloud or Facebook or YouTube. Just type Prepped and Polished and you'll find us. If you need tutoring, one-to-one, online, or in person, go to preppedandpolished.com and a chat box will appear. If you are more of a phone person, 781-753-9951. On today's episode, I talked to Cynthia Klein. Cynthia is a parenting expert whose passion is to create more peace in the world by first creating peace in the home. Cynthia's book, Ally Parenting, a Non-Adversarial Approach to Transform Conflict into Cooperation, guides parents through an effective and harmonious approach that empowers them to successfully change and strengthen the family unit. Through her 26 years as a parenting coach, speaker, and author, and mother of a 31-year-old daughter, Cynthia has impacted thousands of families around the world. On today's episode, Cynthia will teach parents how to build stronger bonds with their teens, and she gets very specific, and you're going to learn a lot. I'm excited about this episode. If you want another related episode, go to episode 192 with Gina Beagle. And Gina talks about how to help teens reduce stress. And to work with Cynthia Klein, check out www.bridges2understanding.com. bridgestounderstanding.com. Let's get right to it. Hi, Cynthia. Thanks so much for coming on the Prepped and Polished podcast. How are you today?
Wonderful. It's great to be here with you.
Great. Can you just tell our audience a little bit about what brought you to where you are today as a parenting expert?
Well, I think it started when I was a teenager and I didn't have a good relationship with my mother and I wanted to improve it. So that's kind of the beginning. Like I had this desire to have a great relationship with my own child in the future. So that seed was planted. And then I got my degree in psychology from Berkeley. Then I was an elementary school teacher because I've always been an educator rather than a therapist type. And so I was an elementary school teacher for a while. And then I knew I wanted to use my psychology along with my expertise and education. And it just came into I had a child and I came into a situation where I could get some training on how to be a parent educator. And that's where it started. And then I got more training and I was raising my daughter and perfecting the skill of how do you actually help parents think about how they're parenting and guide them into more effective solutions. So I've been doing it for, 26 years now, and I love it.
Wow, congratulations. Let's jump right into it. Is there a specific way you think parents can build a strong bond or connection with their teenager?
Right. And I want to first put out there that what I'm going to talk about, you can do with any age. It particularly is crucial to have this done with teens. So a lot of times parents try to talk about how do I get my child to do their homework, or how do I get my child to there's kind of this controlling mentality. And I feel very strongly that the fundamental, what needs to happen as the foundation is the relationship with the teenager. So my own daughter is now 31, married recently. So I've been through the difficult teenage years. And what it is, if we can learn how to listen to our teenagers when they have a problem that they want to talk about, not our problem, then if we learn that skill, then that will build an amazing amount of trust for us. It'll build a foundation for mutual respect, and that when they go off and they leave our house, they will still want to talk to us if we know how to respond when they express their own struggle.
That makes a lot of sense. How do parents know when to give their teen advice about their problem or when to let the teen solve it?
Yeah, this is a tricky skill to learn because there can be a tendency for parents to not understand when it's the teen's problem to solve, or even when it is the teen's problem to solve, to actually give up the parents giving up their own sense of need for control and power because of fear. Fear takes over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if I don't, right, they're going to do the wrong thing, of which they will, if I don't control them. And so what happens if you don't know when to let them solve their own problem, they will start to pull away from you more and more, and they will not want to share with you. And so when I work with parents privately, so I do a lot of online workshops, and I also work privately as a private coach with parents. One of the first things I help them understand is there's 3 roles that you do with your kids at different times. You're either a director, a collaborator, or a supporter, depending on who has responsibility for solving the problem.
Okay, so director, collaborator, and supporter. Okay, what are the differences in those roles?
Okay. So a director is when you want your child to do something, your teen to do something, and they just don't want to do it, and yet you know they need to do it. Let's say, for example, taking the dishes over, doing cleaning the bathroom, emptying the dishwasher, because that was something my daughter had to do and didn't like to do. So you need to use what's called director strategies. In other words, as a parent, I'm responsible for figuring out how this is going to get done because my child isn't interested. So that's a director. But then when there's things where it impacts, the result is something both child and parent wants to figure out, or if they need to come to a decision together of how they're going to figure it out, that's the collaborator role. So you do collaborative problem solving. Now, what gets tricky, like I mentioned about doing chores, is you actually do a blend of the 2 roles. So you want to first have a discussion, right, about, okay, what are all the chores? Who's going to do what? That's a collaborator role. You want to come up with this, right? Because just telling kids what to do, especially when they're teens, isn't very effective, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, right. So you first collaborate, and then to make sure they follow through, you might have to have what's called a director strategy. And one director strategy I loved was the after then, or the work before play, or like, can I go to my daughter said, can I go to my friend's house? I would think, okay, what hasn't she done? We talked about what she was going to do. She hasn't cleaned the bathroom. I would use a director strategy such as, after you clean your bathroom, then you can go to your friend's house. So, and then there was more to that strategy, which I love that strategy. So those are the director and collaborator. Collaborator also might be right now we have a issue with actually going to school, but if you're trying to get out of to go to school in the morning, that's a collaborative problem to have a discussion about, not in the morning, and another time, and come up with a plan together. Okay. It's not, too often parents are like trying to push and prod and nag their kids. They're taking it on as a director role, like I'm responsible, but in actuality, it needs to be a collaborator discussion, which you can have great discussions. So, and then you've got the supporter role, which is if your teen has an issue that really directly impacts them first, such as issues with friends. Okay. So often if a child starts talking about a problem with a friend, a parent might want to like jump in and give advice.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And do teenagers like parents telling them what to do with their friends?
No. Not at all.
Right. Not at all. Right. Because what's happened, the parent is stepping over and is not being a supporter. They're saying, they're like making it their problem. They're being more like a director, right?
Right.
And so the wall goes up. And that's why, because they need to be a supporter. When you're a supporter, your mindset is, and even what you say to your teen is, wow, this sounds challenging. You'll make the final decision, whatever you choose to do. If you'd like, we could talk about it, and I could throw out some ideas or not, but we could just talk about it to help you process it. You'll make the final decision. Wow.
Makes a lot of sense there. So the supporter role, this is the one used when the teen is making this decision about how to handle the problem. Could you tell us more about that?
the supporter role. And it's a skill that can be learned. So the role has actually 4 steps when I teach it. So I have a book, Ally Parenting, that I wrote because I found that parents need very specific step-by-step guidance, and that's what I write about. So there's the supporter role has 4 steps, and the first is to stop blocking, and I'll explain that in a moment.
Okay.
The second is to listen openly. The third is to discuss ideas and let your teen choose the solution.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? So remember, you're a supporter. You're saying you're going to choose. You're not going to say, I think you should do this, or if I were you, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Step 4 is to check in later.
How much later?
Again, it depends.
Okay.
Like, let's say your friend says they're struggling with having an argument with somebody, and you might, a couple days later, you might say,
okay,
I'm wondering how that was going, very gently.
Oh, nice, yeah.
And if they don't want to talk about it, you say, that's fine. Yeah, you have to pull away, and it's very difficult because parents nowadays, we're so involved in our kids' lives that when the kids pull away, it's like, this pain and suffering goes on inside parents nowadays.
Definitely. Now, what about the blocking part? Can you just tell me a little bit about like what it means to stop blocking?
Yeah. Wow. Whenever I can, I love to talk to parents about blocking communication, because when I learned about this, I had training, the very first program I did, about when a person, so this relates to anybody, we're talking about teenagers, but when a teen or anybody is expressing what they feel and think about their own issue, and we say something that ends up in some way hurting them, it gives them an underlying negative message that feels hurtful. It hurts their self-esteem. And then they either get mad at you, somehow they shut down. They either don't talk to you, or they say, that's not right, or you don't understand. So it keeps them from talking. And teens, anybody needs to feel that they are heard. Right?
Absolutely.
And so when I learned about communication blocks, it's something I applied in all of my life. Like when somebody's sharing something with me, how am I responding? And it's different people like different responses. So with what I'm saying, is that keeping the person talking more, or is it shutting the person down? That's what you pay attention to. So it's not like, well, I didn't mean that, but it's like always thinking. So you think you're always taking responsibility as much as you can to how you're responding. Are you allowing that person to feel that you're listening and you care and they want to talk more, or are you saying things that make them feel like you don't believe in that they can figure it out, or and which is often what happens when parents tell kids what to do. Fascinating.
So maybe you can give us some examples of some communication blocks and how to like kind of make it better. What should we do? How about like I'm a teen, you're an adult, I say something, giving advice.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it was great. When I work with parents, I have worksheets because we need specifics, right? Everybody. Yep. I was trained to be a teacher, so I'm a teacher, and so yes, it was great. So I gave you examples. So I think it'll be fun if we role play the examples, and you could be the teen expressing some challenge you're having. I'm going to be the parent, and I'm going to be responding in a way that has an underlying message. Different ones. So, for example, the first one we'll do is giving advice. And when I give you advice, the underlying hurtful message is you can't figure it out on your own. So I have to tell you what to do. So let's try the first one.
Okay. I hate math homework. My teacher gives way too much.
You should do some when you first get home.
Okay.
So that could feel like you don't think I can figure it out.
Also, it feels like you didn't listen to me.
Ah,
Right?
good point. Good point. All right. So that's great. So we'll keep that in mind.
Okay.
You said I didn't listen to you because later when we talk about step 2, listen openly, I'm going to show how I could respond so that you would feel like I'm listening to you. Okay. Let's
Okay,
go through
nice.
some more. Okay.
Okay. So I can never make this project good enough.
You might not be good at this, but you are really good at math.
Okay.
So this is distracting.
Distracting. Okay.
It can also be placating, but it's like I don't want you to feel those feelings, and I don't want to see you upset. So let's move on to something better.
Okay.
Now the next one is psychologizing. So this is an interesting. Let's see.
Okay. I can't stand my hair. It never looks good.
I think you're comparing your hair to those hair commercials. Do you like that response?
I mean, it's more clever. Yeah, I mean, it's not, and it's kind of real because we do compare ourselves to society, to the media, and.
Okay. So if you're okay with it, then it isn't a block for you. So if I said that to another teenager and they got really mad at me, if they said, well, you don't understand, then that would tell me that wasn't helpful.
Yeah.
That felt like a block. So again, it's how the teen responds, how they take it, whether it's a block or not. So let's try commanding.
Okay. Mike and Joe won't hang out with me anymore.
They're your longtime good friends. You need to fix this.
Okay.
So how do you like that?
I don't. If I were a teenager, I would hate it. That's just me, though.
Yeah. So why would you hate it?
It's a sense of urgency. It makes me feel a little uncomfortable. It's like you got to do something now.
Okay. And I certainly know what you should do, and you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So right. So again, that's the hurtful thing. It's like you can't figure it out. You're stupid.
Yes.
So there's times that kids say, "You think I'm stupid" to their parents, and the parents say, "I've never said you're stupid."
Oh.
See, but the underlying message when the blocking might have been that you're stupid.
Got it.
Yeah. Let's try know-it-all.
Okay. Homework is just a waste of time. I'm not going to do it.
Homework is not a waste of time. It will prepare you for doing well in college.
I feel like a lot of helicopter parents do that kind of stuff, and it's not getting through to the kid.
So if it is a block, so every block, so know-it-all is the underlying message is, since I know it all, you must know nothing. Wow.
Yeah.
So you see, parents are trying to be helpful, but they're actually hurting their kids. And that's what's so important to understand that. Okay, let's just do it. Let's go down to interrogating.
Okay.
Then we can move on.
I don't like school anymore, and I don't want to go.
What happened at school? Did you get in trouble?
If you want a kid to shut down, this is probably the one that they would. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So this is asking a question, but the underlying message of interrogating is you've done something wrong. So even if parents pick up a kid from school and they say, "How was school?" And if the child feels like whatever I say, my parent's going to say it's wrong, or they're going to ask me more questions, then question becomes an interrogation, which is a communication block, which is why just asking, they're going to think, oh my gosh, if I start talking about things, they're going to ask me more questions. They're going to tell me I should have done something different. They're going to give me advice. So a simple question of parents' interest becomes an interrogation.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. So let's do a couple. So what do people want to know what to do instead, right?
Yeah, definitely. What's a better solution here?
Right, right. And there's more blocks, and I have more blocks in my book. I have a whole chart of them because I love charts. Right. So remember the 4 steps. The first one is stop blocking. So the first thing is for parents to become aware when my child's expressing what's going on with them. My job is not to fix it. It's not to tell them what to do. It's my job as a parent is to help my teenager think about things. So the more, if I become a parent that my teen can talk to me aloud about it and process what they're thinking aloud with me just being there, giving them space, then their prefrontal cortex, their logical part of their brain, develops much faster and better when I give them space to think. Wow.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So the listen openly is the next, what you should really be working on. Can you tell us?
Yeah. So you have to stop blocking first because, okay. So I'm going to give you an example. So let's say one was, I hate math homework. My teacher gives way too much.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give 4 responses to that.
Okay.
And see which one feels most empathetic. So an empathetic response is simply the parents thinking, I am just giving them space to keep talking. That's all it is. I'm not trying to figure it out. I'm not trying to tell them what to do. I just am giving them space. So the child says, I hate math homework. My teacher gives way too much. Here's 4 responses and see what when you feels most empathetic. A, stop complaining. It's not too much for you. B, just do a little bit, take a break, and then do more. C, you seem frustrated with the math. D, it isn't as bad as it seems. You can do it.
I say C. You seem frustrated with the math.
Yeah. So you see in that phrase, I'm simply saying I'm giving space for you to talk more. And you notice I said you seem, not you are.
Right.
So changing that one word, if I said you are frustrated, that turns into psychologizing. So just with the tentative word, it's like you could even say, I could be wrong. You seem frustrated. That would give them like, yeah, I'm not, or okay. So let's try another one. I can never make this drawing good enough. So here's 4 responses. A, have you tried getting help from your teacher? B, I know what we should do. Let's get a drawing book that you can use to help you. C, don't be such a perfectionist. It's fine the way it is. D, I can understand how frustrating it is when it isn't turning out the way you want.
D for sure. D, definitely.
Now, I want to say something about D is the first part might not feel good to a child. I can understand.
Right.
Because, it could feel like you're talking about yourself.
Right.
So here's how you can eliminate that, and here's what you could say instead. It's frustrating when it isn't turning out the way you want.
I get it. Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's less personalizing it yourself.
Yes. And it's also that I talk to parents about thinkers or feelers, depends on your language that you use. So I'm really big into language. What's the impact of my words? So that's why I work with parents, usually of kids around age 5 to 25. I help parents with kids are in college, right? You want them to keep talking to you when they're in college.
Yeah.
I had with my daughter, when I took her out with a bunch of her friends when she was a freshman in college, and we went out for pizza, and then we were back in the restroom afterwards, and one of the girls says, Jen is so lucky to have you as a mom. Wow. And I was like, oh, she said, because she can talk to you.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah. She said, I can't talk to my mom because she'll get all upset.
Right.
So if parents can learn about this, the how to be the supporter, that's the key foundation. You'll build a great relationship and trust with their teenager.
Amazing. And then the other steps were so listen openly, and then do the other ones just kind of fall naturally after that, or do you have to really practice them as well? So we got to discuss ideas and let your teen choose a solution, check in later.
So here's the thing. Some teenagers that you might only do step 1 and 2 with them. Just the process of them discussing it helps them formalize ideas. So be careful if the kids are coming out with stuff that you're thinking, oh, that's crazy, that's not going to work, that you don't say anything, because anybody, as we talk through problems, we don't come up to the solution at the beginning, right? Like, it takes a while. So my daughter wasn't keen on then discussing step 3, which discussing possible solutions. So 1 and 2 helped her a lot.
Okay.
But if you have a teenager, let's say you do have one that is okay with that, and they've expressed themselves, you said some empathetic phrases, and then you might want to try to lead into step 3, which is, I'm wondering if you'd like to come up with some ideas. Maybe we could toss around some ideas of what you could do. Would you like to do that?
Sure. Okay.
Okay. So, and if they say, no, that's okay, thank you, then you just feel wonderful that you did step 1 and 2 with them. Don't feel hurt. Don't feel rejected. Just know that, okay, I've helped my child think. So let's say they do say, let's toss around some ideas. So make sure you don't tell them what to do, that you don't block, and then you'll end up coming up with ideas, and you might say, okay, well, which one do you think you might want to try first?
Okay. Yeah.
Try first, right? And it might work, it might not. And you might even say, okay, well, so when do you think you might want to do that? That might be pushing it too much. You can just try it. So if you try to push and you get resistance, don't keep pushing. Don't keep pushing. It's their problem to solve. And so depending on what they say, if they say, let's say they're having conflict with a friend. They said, I think I'm going to call him tonight, let's say. So you might not say anything. Okay, great. You could say, I'd love to hear how it turns out if you want to share it with me.
Okay.
Or not. So let's say they don't share it with you. And you could, so the step 4 is check in later. Again, it's tentative. Yeah. Could just say, I'm wondering how that went, what we talked about. You have to be careful about that, because maybe it didn't go well, and maybe they don't want to talk about it. So when you do step 4, you might kind of say, I realize you might not want to talk about this. If you'd like to talk about it, I'd love to hear how it went.
Wow. Yeah, language is so important here. Every word counts.
Exactly. So that's why I really like to give parents specific words.
Yeah.
Because that's what we need. It doesn't come automatically if we didn't grow up with it, which I didn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't come from love. It comes from skill building.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. This is awesome. I always ask guests if you have any advice for teens listening to you today. Just words of wisdom as they get ready for college and young adulthood.
Wow. See if you can find an adult that you can trust and talk to about what's going on. Whether that's a counselor at school, somebody that you can feel confident about. I think that's important. Who can I trust? And then even, let's say you want to try to trust your parents. If you listen to this and you want them to learn about blocks, you might want to say, I heard about the communication blocks, and this could be helpful for us to talk about.
Perfect. Well, Cynthia, thanks so much for coming on the Prepped and Polished podcast, and really appreciate your wisdom and work you do with teens and parents.
Wonderful. It's been great being here. So thank you so much for having me.
And this wraps up our show today. This was episode number 227 with parenting expert Cynthia Klein. To connect with Cynthia and work with her, check out www.bridges2understanding.com. bridges2understanding.com. I hope you enjoyed today's episode 227. Rewind and go back to 192, my conversation with Gina Beagle. She talks about how teens can reduce stress. And our next podcast, episode number 228, is coming in next week or the week after. It'll be our next tutoring tips episode. You can check out our podcast by going to preptandpolish.com/podcast, or you can go to soundcloud.com/preptandpolish, or you can go to youtube.com/preptandpolished. Thank you for joining us on the Prepped and Polished podcast. Now go out there and take control of your education.